So in a previous video, we showed how to use a subquery with the in operator. And we're just going to take a couple of different looks at how we can do this. Here's what we want to do. I want to find, let me look at my ER diagram, my name, my district, and my population ID for the country, for the capital of the country of Australia. So here's how I'm going to do this. Let's use the subquery with the in operator to show you how we did that before, and then we're going to introduce the exists operator. So here's what I want. I want the name, I want the district, and I want the population from city where, and then I'm going to do the in thing here. So where ID is in, I'm going to go ahead and capitalize that just to make it stand out. And then I'm going to do a subquery, and my subquery is going to be this. We're going to select capital, tab all the way that over, from country where name equals Australia. All right, and if I did this correctly, let me close off my subquery there. If I did this correctly, I didn't. It generated an error. Unknown, select P-I-T-A-L, spell capital correctly. There we go. And that pulled up Canberra as the capital of Australia. It's in the capital region, population 322,000. Okay, so what we've got here, and we looked at this, something similar to this in a previous video, we have a subquery, and we're looking for the ID for the city is in this list that's generated. Okay, so we can also use an exists operator. So for this, it's going to look for anything that exists from the subquery. Now this is going to be a little bit interesting because when I execute this, it's going to bring me everything. So select name, district, population from city. Well, it did, but it did it for all of my cities. Where exists, so it's just looking for something that exists, select capital from country, where name equals Australia. Okay, so it pulled all of my cities for me because it's looking for any record that exists. And basically this did not limit what it pulled at all. In order for it to do that, I'm going to need to do another option, my where clause. And I need to correlate this query with my outer query. And so this is going to be called a correlated subquery. So I'm going to do this where capital equals, and then I need to relate it to my outer query. I need to create the correlation. So I have to put the name of my table using my outer query dot ID, and let me put my and on this line, and name equals Australia. So this creates a correlated query. So it correlates my inner query with my outer query. And now when I execute, it pulls just that one thing. Okay, so it's doing an exist, or the exist function looks for anything in here that matches, or anything from my inner query, and then tries to find something that exists in the outer query if there's something that relates it to. And that's why we need this correlation right here. So what if I wanted all of my cities in Australia? Well, if I look at my ER diagram, in my country code, you'll see my country, you see I have a code and a country code. There we go for city. I can create a correlation there. I created my correlation between this ID and my capital, but what if I created a correlation between these two? So I want anything, the name, the district, the population from city where it exists, and now my correlation, I'm going to do where code equals city dot country code. And now that should be my correlation. And so now it should find a list of things here that it matches or exists in my city table based on that country code. And here are all of my cities that are in Australia in my database. So this exists, we can use in place of the in operator, although frequently we're going to end up having to correlate the two in order to get exactly the information that we want. And this right here, where I reference it between the inner query and the outer query, that's my correlation, what makes it a correlated subquery. Okay, while we're here, I am just going to throw out one thing, and we're not going to do a demo of this, but I want to throw it out because I want you to be aware of it. And that is, we have done a subquery or an inner query now in a couple of different videos with an outer query. So there is nothing that says you can't do a query within a query within a query. So we can do subqueries within subqueries and make them as long and complex as we want. Now, one of the things you're going to want to keep in mind if you start doing that is, remember, at some point you're going to have to come back and maintain this. So you might just want to be aware that we don't always want to do a bunch of subqueries if it means we're going to have to try to figure it out later and we might have a hard time doing it. So my recommendation is, if you need to use multiple subqueries, then absolutely document it very, very well. Document it well so that you know exactly what you're doing. And then when you come back and you have to look at it later, or somebody else looks at it later, that is just going to simplify their life.